All right, let's get more details on this with our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us all the way from New York. Sherwin, a very good afternoon to you. So what more did President Biden say in his statement marking today's somber anniversary?
Alicia, certainly a very lengthy statement issued by the White House on behalf of President Biden. And it's important to point out that the focus here is on the initial act here by Hamas against Israel, right? So much has happened since then. So it's really important for us to emphasize that the focus very much on the initial act against the Israelis here that has subsequently resulted, of course, in this war, this long-standing war that has devastated Gaza. And, you know, we certainly do not want to focus on the victims in that conflict as well, but the focus very much certainly on the initial victims here, which were the Israelis after that attack on October 7th. President Biden says on this solemn anniversary, let us bear witness to the unspeakable brutality of the October 7th attacks, but also to the beauty of the lives that were stolen on that day, Alicia. The October 7th attacks brought to the surface painful memories left by millennia of hatred and violence against the Jewish people. That is why the president says soon after that attack, I became the first American president to visit Israel during wartime. Today, he said, and every day I think of the hostages and their families. We will never give up, and we will until we bring all the remaining hostages home safely. He strongly condemns the vicious surge in anti-Semitism that has been witnessed in America, but also in places around the world. I believe that history will also remember October 7th as a dark day for the Palestinian people because of the conflict that Hamas unleashed that day. Far too many civilians have suffered too much during this year of conflict, and tens of thousands have been killed, and the human toll has been made far worse by terrorists hiding and operating among innocent people. We will not stop working to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza that brings all the hostages home, allows for a surge in humanitarian aid to ease the suffering on the ground, and the ceasefire that also assures Israel's security. We also continue to believe that a diplomatic solution across the Israel-Lebanon border region is the only path to restoring lasting calm. So, as you can see, right, the first iteration of pain was against the Israelis, but there has been so much subsequent pain, Alicia, vis-a-vis the situation in Gaza, vis-a-vis the situation in Lebanon now, and of course a great deal of concern that this war in the Middle East might now be expanding even further. You saw the ballistic missile strike from Iran last week, and of course the big concern is that Israel will now be fighting a war on multiple fronts. I can also tell you that President Biden, Alicia, will today light a candle in a memorial gesture at the White House. Vice President Harris, the Democratic nominee for president, will commemorate the victims by planting a tree at her official residence today. We're told the tree is a pomegranate tree, which represents righteousness and hope in Judaism. She's also expected to deliver remarks at the ceremony. And then the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump, will participate in a remembrance ceremony in Miami later this evening. So quite a lot of remembrance. And of course, as we've seen all weekend and later today in New York and around the country, lots of protests planned in solidarity, either with the Israelis, but certainly a lot of solidarity to be expressed on the streets of the United States in solidarity with the Palestinian cause, particularly what continues to happen in Gaza.
Let's further expand on those protests that are planned, Sherwin. We understand that the Israeli mission to the United Nations is also holding quite a number of events to mark the anniversary. Do share some of those with us, please.
Yeah, the Israeli mission to the UN putting out a notice over the weekend that they will hold a memorial event. It will be headlined by the ambassador, Israel's ambassador, Danny Danon, to the UN. We are told the U.S. ambassador will participate, various diplomats. We're also told that it will be attended by a lot of released hostages, but also the families of hostages who continue to be held by Hamas in Gaza. That number is at around 101, but we also do not know the condition of these hostages. We also do not know how many of the 101 thought to still be alive are in fact alive, Alicia. So certainly a very clear and visceral pain that continues to be felt by those families seeking, to find the latest and certainly to get those hostages released. There's also an exhibition titled Eternal Embrace by an Israeli artist and photographer, Ifat Pir, in collaboration with what's called the Zionist Council in Israel, and that is due to open later today here at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
And Sherwin, in many ways, this attack and subsequent war in Gaza and now Lebanon has demonstrated, of course, the international community's inability to end this war, and also highlighted a Security Council in particular that has simply been unable to meet the moment despite the deteriorating situation in Gaza that has been described as hell on earth.
So, this system that was created after those wars, in the early 20th century, the World War II in particular, that essentially gave birth to the United Nations, and it created this council called the Security Council. That's mandate is, the responsible of international peace and security. And on the Gaza file and on so many other files of late, it's a council that, based on that 1945 makeup, is simply not able to arrest these conflicts that just keep being perpetuated and ongoing. What we've also seen here is the General Assembly step up in the absence of the Security Council's ability to do so. The General Assembly has passed resolutions demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, one that was passed by over 150 votes in favor in the 193 member UN General Assembly, calling for an immediate ceasefire, for the immediate release of all the hostages, for the upscaling of humanitarian aid. Those resolutions are there, they are international law, but they are not being implemented. And so the big question becomes, what system is in place for us to deal with conflicts if the UN that has been created for this purpose, the Security Council in particular, is not able to arrest these conflicts? What we've also seen, Alicia, is the waning influence of the United States. On the one hand, the U.S. is funneling weapons to Israel so that it can, it has the right to protect itself and to defend itself after this attack. But on the other hand, this very same United States is the lead negotiator in a possible ceasefire agreement that simply hasn't come to the fore. And so there's certainly questions about what the U.S.'s ability in a situation like this, right? Israel's closest ally in that region, and what kind of influence and pressure and leverage the United States can bring to bear here, because it certainly hasn't delivered what the U.S. administration has been pushing for now for months, a ceasefire that will lead to a peace in the region where we can then start talking about a two-state solution. All those things, simply those chips haven't fallen into place. And so too many questions a year later rather than answers in terms of what the UN Security Council and certainly the international community is able to do in situations like this. Not only this one, Alicia, but certainly others moving forward.
And a lot of Americans also criticizing their support, of course, for Israel while there's an ongoing crisis in Northern Carolina there. We're going to leave it there, Sherwin. That is SABC News correspondent in New York for us with an update, of course, on, the 7th October, first anniversary of Hamas attacking Israel. And that was, of course, just a basic update on what the United States has said, which they basically said they will continue to support Israel.